Hello and welcome. Today I have a very special treat, special to me, because I very often solicit questions and requests. I don't get them as often as I'd like, but a week or so ago, a gentleman named Darien asked this question. He said, please do a video on the best way to learn card magic. Darien, thank you so much for asking. It's my pleasure to address questions. I love doing it. Card magic is not my specialty, but I've done card magic. I've studied card magic. There have been various points in my life when I've dedicated myself to card magic. It's not my current specialty, but I have a nice long history with card magic. So I think I have a few things that I can say about it. But before I do that, I want to share something with you that I got for Christmas. I'm blessed because I have a wonderful family. I have a wonderful wife. I have a wonderful brother, and they treat me really well. And this right here, this is bookends, and it was manufactured by Knob Creek Metal Arts. Knob Creek Metal Arts. 4880 Knob Creek Road, Brooks, Kentucky. I'm going to put their phone number and their website below so you can take a look at that. But take a look at this. It's it's a sawing in half illusion. I mean, seriously. I have bookends right here. I have Vernon's Revelations. I'm going to talk about it in a second because I think it's very important to the study of card magic. But I just wanted to show you that, the sawing in half illusion. I'm going to put this aside for a second so you can see this, folks. This is the way it came. It was Christmas Day. I was taking care of my father. You know, he has dementia. I've talked about that before. I was his primary caregiver on Christmas Day. So my entire focus was on my dad and my dad's well-being. And I wasn't paying attention to anything else. And I was about to leave. I hadn't opened a thing. I was going to get that out of there. And my brother said, please open this gift. I want to see your reaction. So I opened this thing. And I just, I could not believe it. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. The sawing in half illusion, folks. Bookends. I mean, seriously. How cool is that? So anyway, I wanted to show that to you before I got started. It's shortly after Christmas. I haven't made a video since Christmas. Of course, you'll be watching this any old time. It could be spring when you watch it. I don't know. But I wanted to show you that. Now, back to the primary topic. Darien, thank you so much, Darien. I appreciate your questions. And if you have questions, if you have comments, please put them in the comments below. I love them. I love to read them. I love to respond to them. And the comments that I've received thus far have been extremely positive. The requests have been genuine, and it's been my delight, really, to address your issues and concerns. Darien asked me to do a video on the best way to learn card magic. Now, the short answer is card magic is a branch of magic, which is a performing art. The best way to learn any performance art is to perform the art. Get out there in front of your chosen audience and work. And you will learn what is effective and what is not effective in a way that you will never learn practicing and rehearsing on your own. So I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll probably repeat it in future videos. You cannot learn a performance art if you are not performing. So my first recommendation is whatever books or materials you have read and you've learned some tricks from, get out there and perform those tricks. And do it so that you can learn what is effective. Now, for all magicians, but especially for card magicians, there are three types of audiences. I was looking for something else the other day. And by the way, I have books. I have so many books. As I've said before, I've been doing this for 50 years. I've been collecting magic and materials and books for 50 years. I've got stuff. I mean, this is a fairly It's a small study that I'm in, but I have bookshelves over here, bookshelves over here, bookshelves behind me. I took out the closet, put all bookshelves in the closet. They're full to the brim with magic books, and I still have cases and cases of books in the basement. I was looking through this the other day. I was looking for something else, and I found Harbin Cadabra. Now, Robert Harbin is, I'm going to do a video on him at some point. Robert Harbin is one of my favorite magic inventors, magic innovators. He, of course, invented the zigzag illusion, which is an illusion that I did when I did the illusion show. And I have one being built that I hope will be unique among zigzags. But anyway, he invented the zigzag, and he had something to say that was exactly the notes I had written. Now, it really, I mean, I've read this book before. Maybe it was in my subconscious mind. I don't know, but I think it's a basic truism. Each audience is different, and each demands a unique approach. Now, there are three basic audiences, and here's why I'm saying this. You need to start, when you start thinking about learning a discipline of a performance art, learning a branch of magic such as card magic, you want to begin with your audience in mind. Always start with your audience in mind. Who is your intended audience? In my opinion, and in Robert Harbin's opinion, there are three potential intended audiences. Number one is laymen. And by laymen, I mean people who have no affiliation with magic as a performance art. They might be interested in it, or they might not be interested in it, but they're not magicians. They're laymen. Number two is magicians, other magicians. And there are plenty of professional card magicians who basically make their living manufacturing or coming up with the material designed to appeal to magicians. These two audiences are entirely different. What appeals to a magician is going to bore a lay audience. What appeals to a lay audience is going to bore a magician. So it's very hard to reach both. Now, there is a person who I believe did reach both. In other words, he produced material that was fascinating for magicians, fascinating to watch, but also had commercial appeal. This is Guy Hollingworth's material, and I only put it out there now to say that it is possible to reach two different audiences at the same time. He achieved it with this collection. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But for the most part, you want to decide who your audience is. You have three potential audiences: laymen, magicians, and yourself. Now, I put yourself in that category as an audience because in my own experience with card magic, there are things that I have done. There are card tricks that I have studied that I honestly never, I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to perform this, but it didn't matter. I was fascinated by the way my hands worked, by the way the technique was. I was fascinated just working with the cards. I think Ricky Jay Ricky Jay often practices with a three-way mirror. In other words, a mirror here, a mirror on the side. He'll practice this way, and I think a lot of the material that he practices he might never perform because he enjoys the process. And so, especially with card magic, it's entirely legitimate to say, well, you know, I'm studying card magic because I enjoy it, and I never really intend to perform it. I just enjoy doing it, and it's an entirely legitimate way. But when you think about, I want to learn card magic, you need to start by making a decision, and that decision is, who am I going to perform for? Is this going to be just for me? Am I just doing it for my own enrichment? Am I doing it because I want to perform at the local Society of American Magicians club meeting? Am I doing it for other magicians? Or am I doing it for lay audiences? Now, the advantage of doing it for a lay audience, of course, is that lay audiences are the ones who pay you. So if you have in the back of your mind, I want to perform for lay audiences, I want to be a professional or a semi-professional magician, then you really need to emphasize your lay audience material. Not that you can't perform for magicians, but as I said, if you go and do Brainwave, for example, Brainwave has a very simple plot. Your audience member names a card, any card, and that card is the only one face up in the deck. Very simple plot. Laymen tend to love it. Magicians tend to hate it. Magicians hate it because they've seen it and seen it and seen it. They've seen all the variations of it. But for a lay audience, it's still very effective. Now, just not to digress, but the Brainwave itself is a very exposed trick. Now, there are lots of variations. I'm going to go over some variations with you, give you some options. You don't necessarily want to do the commercially available Brainwave exactly the way it's presented in the catalogs, because lay audiences make sure. Let me give you an example. I was doing a walk around at a very upscale restaurant. It was a Thanksgiving. It wasn't this past Thanksgiving, but it was a Thanksgiving. I was being paid very well by the establishment to go table to table and entertain while they waited for their Thanksgiving Day meal. So I walked up to a table and I did, among other things, I did Brainwave. And one of the people at the table exposed how the trick was done. And you know, he was not a magician, but he had purchased the trick, and so he knew it was done, and he felt at liberty to expose it. That kind of thing can happen. Now, you know, I learned. I never from that point on, I never did the standard Brainwave. I do something else, and like I said, I'll give you some options on that. But let me go back to Harbin Cadabra here. This is page 303 in Harbin Cadabra, again written by Robert Harbin. It says, at a very, very early stage, you must decide just who it is you want to entertain. You must decide whether you are going to be doing magic just to amuse yourself, your best friends, or to baffle your friends at the magic club. In other words, other magicians. Yourself, other magicians. Or whether you want to entertain the public. These are three distinct audiences. But if you decide that you want to entertain the public, you must get something quite clear in your mind. And that is that nothing must be complicated. The moment that you make the plot too complicated, you become a bore. Now, magicians tend to like complex plots. Lay people do not. This kind of thing loses you the jobs and just turns you into the bore of all time. The best way to find out how the public thinks is to talk to them about the magicians they have seen or the tricks they have enjoyed. And I often do that. When I'm doing a show and I get into conversation with lay people, I very often will say, who have you seen before? What magic have you seen before? What appealed to you? What do you remember? And I learn so much in those conversations. So, as you contemplate learning card magic, the first thing you need to decide is who you're going to perform for. If you will do that, you will be off to a good start. J.N. Hofzinger, don't know how to pronounce the name. One of you card guys will correct me, I'm sure. Calls the cards the poetry of magic. If you've been in magic for 2 days, you've probably heard cards referred to as the poetry of magic. I like the phrase for one reason. Poetry. I happen to be a writer as well. I have tried my hand at poetry. I don't do it. I do mostly long fiction. I do mostly novels. But poetry is a very specific discipline in the writing arts. And it's finer, if that makes sense. It's finer. I'm not going to say it's more difficult, but you have to be a lot more precise. And I think card magic, if you're comparing card magic to, say, cabaret or full stage or coins even, or thimbles or balls, billiard balls, or whatever it is, card magic requires a certain finesse. Now, I recently started studying the violin. I've been playing the guitar since I was a teenager. I had lessons when I was in high school. I studied classical guitar in high school. And I had some lessons a few years back. I wanted to learn lead guitar, which is a specific discipline within the guitar. So I studied with a gentleman local to me. So I have had lessons, but in my opinion, lessons aren't necessary when you're studying the guitar. There's a lot of advantages to the guitar over other instruments, and it's not that difficult to learn how to play the guitar. I recently started studying the violin. The violin is a much different instrument. I have found that private lessons are indispensable when it comes to the violin. In order to produce a quality sound out of the violin, the bow that you're using has to be properly, you have to apply rosin. You have to make sure that you are hitting the string at just a particular place and that the bow is parallel to the bridge. You have to make sure you have no frets as you do on a guitar, so you have to learn where you're supposed to put your fingers to produce a particular note. There are a lot of variables that go into producing quality sound out of a violin that do not apply to any other instrument except for maybe a cello or a viola. So I have found that private lessons are indispensable. And I'm going to suggest that if you want to be a premier, if you want to be a great cardician, you might want to think about private lessons. I'm going to give you lots of other options for learning card magic. And you can learn card magic without private lessons. You can learn good card magic without private lessons. You can learn commercial card magic without private lessons. But if you want to be a Michael Lamar, say, or an Ortiz, or someone who is leading the pack in terms of card magic, you might want to think about private lessons. Now there was as I mentioned, there was a time in my life when I was interested in becoming a serious card person. And I found a gentleman locally, his name is Cy Keller. And I hired him. I asked him if he did private lessons. He said he did. I went to his house once a week. I paid him his fee. And he taught me some really amazing card work, which frankly, I never performed in public. Now, some of this stuff was commercial. Triumph, for example. He taught me to do the Triumph, Divernan's Triumph. He taught me to do an oil and water. He taught me to do an ace assembly. So all those things are commercial, but I just never did it in public. In fact, I kind of lost interest in card magic after I studied with Cy. Cy is a card specialist. He does great work. Anyway, I suggest that to you. Now, I'm going to say something that a lot of great card men might take issue with. But I suggest it to you as an acid test to see whether or not your potential teacher is any good. Watch him do watch the potential teacher do an Elmsley count. Now I say that because just in my own observation, there are lots of magicians who do Elmsleys. An Elmsley count is supposed to look like you're counting the cards from one hand to the next. It's supposed to look like you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, or 5 or 6, or whatever number it is. It's not supposed to look like a move. It's supposed to look like you're counting cards. If it looks artificial, if it looks like a move, if it looks, strained, you don't have a good card man there. You don't have a good card teacher. The Elmsley count, doing that well, or doing the Hammond count, or doing any one of the counts or cuts or moves in a polished way that it's indetectable, that's what it needs to be. If you're going to be a good card person, your technique has to be indetectable. So you don't want to study with somebody who's fumbling with an Elmsley count. But anyway, that was one of the acid tests I used. I wanted to see that the counts... In fact, I didn't want to know that a count was done. I wanted to be taken up in the magic. Let me make some recommendations for those of you who are not necessarily interested in private lessons. I don't blame you if you are, but private lessons are very expensive. And at some point, you say, well, am I really getting my money's worth out of a private lesson? And Usually you're going to take a few lessons and then it's going to stop. It's not going to be something that's ongoing. Now for the violin, I might have a different story to tell you in a year or two. We'll see. But for card magic, I don't know. I studied for a while and then I stopped. But here are some recommendations that I'm going to make to you that I think will help you with your card magic in terms of learning card magic. Now, I think that the basic question that Darien asked, do a video on the best way to learn card magic. Now, I think what Darien had in mind is it better to learn from books, or is it better to learn from videos, or is it better to learn from private instruction? Once again, who do you want to perform for? If you want to work for magicians, you might want to think about private instruction. So you learn the stuff better than anybody else has learned it. You have somebody, an expert who's coaching you. You might want to think about that. If you're thinking about lay people, that's a different story. Certainly if you're doing it for yourself, then do whatever you want to do, really. But I'm going to make recommendations in 3 different categories. I'm going to recommend reading books. I'm going to recommend viewing videos. And I'm going to recommend that you study particular card effects that will be, I believe, foundational in your career as you develop as a card magician. Now, first of all, the books. This is the Royal Road to Card Magic. No surprise there, right? Everybody starts with the Royal Road to Card Magic. It is so foundational. When I started in magic, the Royal Road to Card Magic was considered a foundational book, and everybody read it and everybody recommended it, and I was glad that I did read it, and I'm glad that I took the lessons to heart and I practiced what was in the book. What they have now, though, is they have video accompaniment to this book, so you can not only do you buy the book and read it, but you can buy the videos as well. I have not seen them because by the time the videos came out, I had moved on. My concentration is cabaret-style magic. I like performing for larger audiences. I don't particularly enjoy close-up. I like stand-up cabaret-style performing. I'd love to do full stage, but full stage opportunities don't come every day, and to fill a full stage, you're moving into illusions. Mentalism can do it, but that's a slightly different story. But the Royal Road to Card Magic is something you definitely want to start with. Now, I have a copy of The Expert at the Card Table by Erdnase. I could not locate it. It's somewhere in a box downstairs, I'm sure. You don't want to necessarily neglect that. It's difficult reading. It's difficult reading, I admit. But Vernon started with it. So, I mean, if it was good enough for Vernon, it's certainly good enough for anybody else. You don't want to neglect The Expert at the Card Table either. Here's a little book that I have found indispensable, and I'll tell you why. It's called Counts, Cuts, Moves, and Subtleties by Jerry Menser. It's a really good little reference book, and that's all it is. It's a reference book. You're not really going to find tricks in here per se, but you will find, exactly as the title implies, counts, cuts, moves, and subtleties. Double undercut, brave reversal, concealed reversal, the biddle move, Hammond count, frustration move, the Oram subtlety, the Downs change, the Elmsley count, the Jordan count, and on and on and on. What I like about this, from time to time, you will find in your books, in your books on card magic, the magician will say, do a Hammond count, or do an Elmsley count, or do a variation of this or that or the other thing. And you're like, what? Because he does it. He's assuming you have this foundational knowledge. Well, this is a reference work for you. You can go back and it's illustrated nicely. There's photographs in here. You can go back and you can say, oh yeah, that was the Hammond count, or that was the Elmsley count, or that's how you do these things. So I recommend that to you. Now, this is Guy. I showed you the Guy Hollingworth videos earlier. This is the Guy Hollingworth book. It's called A Collection of Drawing Room Deceptions and Other Card Conjuring by Guy Hollingworth. beautifully illustrated in a very old-fashioned manner. You know what? If you have not seen Guy Hollingworth's work, you need to Google him in video or put his name up here in the search engine and take a look. I'm going to try to put some links below so that you can see. I think I just adore Guy Hollingworth. His presentation, his manner, his style, his card magic, everything the man does. And by the way, I think he has the single best torn and restored card I have ever seen. I've seen variations recently that are pretty good. I've seen all sorts of attempts to do him one better since he first came out with it many years ago now, but I have not seen anything like what he has done. I'm going to get back to Guy in a little bit later when I go over video sources, but let me do that now, by the way. Okay, so the first video source I want to recommend to you, and by the way, Darien, you wanted to know, I think, which is best. Are books best or videos best? Any magic dealer in the country will probably tell you that books are your best value. I believe books are your best value. Dollar per dollar, you're going to get more out of a book than you're going to get out of a DVD. There is an advantage, however, of DVD learning. And there's a disadvantage. In a book, you almost have to develop your own style. You're reading the effect, you're hearing what the effect is supposed to be, you're looking at maybe illustrations, and you're kind of piecing it together. And in the process of piecing it together, you're developing your own style and your own manner for doing it. And I think that is very, very important because you don't want to be a mimic of somebody else. On a DVD, the tendency is to mimic what you're seeing. And that can be certainly a drawback to DVD learning. On the other hand, you actually get to see what the effect looks like. Now, I'll tell you, once again, to do a violin illustration, I'm working through a book called the Suzuki Method. And one teacher said to me, and I've had two teachers at this point, one teacher said to me, you don't necessarily need to hear it, just learn to read the music, you'll be fine. The other teacher said, oh, absolutely not. You need to get the tone in your head so you know what you're playing. So she recommended that I pick up the accompanying CD. I did. I put it in. I hear it, and it makes all the difference in the world. So sometimes you need to see what the effect looks like. And that's why I like DVDs. Now let me make my first DVD recommendation. This is called Di Vernon Revelations. It is a multi-volume set. I believe there are 17 volumes. This is right here. That's 17 volumes. And then you get an audio CD of Magic Castle lectures. And you get some other Magic Castle presentations and lectures and talks in addition to the 17 volumes. Now let me also, in this, you are getting some booklets as well. But let me tell you why I'm recommending this. By the way, Denny Haney, who was my dealer and friend and mentor, Denny Haney is the one who recommended that I pick this up. And I did, and I said, Denny, you know, and at the time I wasn't doing card magic anymore. I said, Denny, I'm not really doing close-up. He said, David, pick it up, study it, pay attention to it. It will change your life. He was right. And let me tell you why. What's so wonderful about this set, in addition to getting Guy Vernon or Gary or Michael Amar, one of these guys, presenting the effect, you also get this discussion that goes on between these expert card magicians, where they're saying, you know, why did you do it this way? Why did you develop it this way? Why don't we try it this way instead? You get this dialogue going back and forth, and what you get is a peek inside the mind of Di Vernon, one of the great creative geniuses of our time. And he's explaining his thought process. And when you understand the thought process, you can create your own stuff. One of the things I loved about this and I'm probably not remembering this right, but I remember Vernon saying, your hands naturally fall a certain way. And you have to develop sleights, you have to develop techniques that complement the way your hands naturally fall. It shouldn't look artificial, like I was talking about the Elmsley count, right? You can tell magicians that are kind of doing this and they're stiff and they're artificial because they're doing a false count. No, it's got to be very natural. And what's natural for Vernon is not necessarily going to be natural for you. But Vernon goes into how to develop your own style, your own technique, to take the basic counts, moves, and subtleties and make them your own. That's what's so valuable. This is a graduate course in magic. Now it's mostly card magic and mostly coins, mostly close up, but whatever kind of magician you are, this will elevate you. This will change you. And then he knew that. That's why he recommended it to me. So I'm going to recommend it to you. It's called Vernon Revelations, and it's not cheap. I mean, like it's huge, but you won't regret it. I promise you, you will not regret it. Then I've recommended this before. I'm going to recommend it again. It's called Easy to Master Card Miracles. And by the way, some of these things are easy to master. Some of them are not. I mean, you can't do, this is 9 volumes, right? 9 volumes, about 2 hours, roughly 2 hours of card magic and explanation on every single volume. I mean, this is fantastic. I watch this for the pure entertainment value of watching Michael Amar work. And the card magic in here is commercial, it's solid, it's good stuff. Man, if you want to learn card magic, do not neglect this. It's still available from magic dealers. It's still available on eBay. I don't know if you can get it on Amazon or not, but you know what? Get it from a magic dealer if you can. Magic dealers need your business. We need our magic dealers, so please buy from magic dealers whenever humanly possible. Michael Amar's work is... I have to do a video on Michael Amar because he is so amazing. You know, I wasn't going to show you this, but I think I'll show it to you anyway. This is Michael Amar's book right here, The Magical of Michael Amar. His cups and balls routine is in here. Fantastic. Now, I wasn't planning to recommend it to you, but Michael Amar is such an important factor in magic today that I think anything that Michael Amar produces should be taken seriously. So that's Michael Amar stuff. Now, the London Collection. This is Guy Hollingworth. It's actually 3 sections here. You got the London Collection. The London Collection was filmed in 1996. It was a television special, and you watch this and it just, it is the best magic going. It's just fantastic. Now, Guy Hollingworth is a card magician. He is one of the best I have ever seen. So if you've not been exposed to this material, get exposed to it. In this other DVD here, he comes up with routines. This is volume 1, this is volume 2. It's called Routines. And he goes into detailed explanation of many of the routines that you see in the London Collection. And then Epilogue. It deals with, if you want to know, by the way, the torn and restored card is actually in his book, but if you want to watch him teach it, it's actually on this video, Epilogue. And wow, I mean, you know what? I mean, I haven't performed it because once again, it's kind of a close up. You know, when I do a torn and restored, I'm doing cut and restored ribbon, I'm doing cut and restored rope, I'm doing the Anderson newspaper tear. That's what a cabaret guy does, okay? We do something large and visual. But this torn and restored card is just magnificent. So, hey, make sure you check out Guy Hollingworth material, and some of it is available on YouTube, so check that out, folks. I'm going to put a link below. I believe the London Collection, just the television show, that demonstrates his material. I believe that's available on YouTube. I'm going to put the link below if I can find it. Now, finally, the last video recommendation that I want to make will be Ricky Jay. If you have not seen Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants, now this is not going to teach you, he's not going to teach you magic, he's not going to teach you his effects, but if you have not seen Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants, you need to watch it right away. I'm going to put the link below. Ricky Jay, you know, when it comes to saying best, that has no meaning. It really does. I mean, you are the best that you can be, and you should not be compared to another artist. This is art. It's not Olympic sports. When it comes to Olympic sports, you can talk about who's best. When it comes to performing art, you want to be the best that you can be. You don't want to compare yourself to somebody else. So I'm going to resist saying who's best, but Ricky Jay is a master. Ricky Jay is brilliant. Ricky Jay needs to be studied. So take a look at Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants, watch him perform, and understand that he's performing in a cabaret setting. He's performing, he's got a table like this, people are, it's a theater, and he's doing card magic in a theater. So folks, it can be done. Now I want to recommend some card tricks to you. I remember Denny used to say to me, David, there are 3 basic card tricks or 3 effects that you should pay attention to. I'm going to expand that list a little bit. His list is included on here. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. So I have basically 9 card effects that I believe you should learn. Every magician should know these tricks, whether you do cabaret or you do close-up or whatever. First of all, you need to do a card stab. Card stab. Now, Bob Sheets and Penn and Teller both built their reputations to some extent on the card stab. Bob Sheets, I remember going to a magic lecture with Bob Sheets, and Bob was going to demonstrate his card stab. He was not going to teach it. And by the way, it's in books, but he didn't want to teach it. It's his signature effect, and he doesn't want other performers doing it. I understand, I get it. But he got me up. A lot of guys get me up because they know I'm compliant. They know I'm gonna go along. I'm not gonna give them trouble. They just have that look about me, I guess. So he gets me up and he shows me his blindfold. It's a crusty, dirty little thing. Puts his blindfold on. He has 3 cards selected. They're shuffled back in the pack, spread out. He's blindfolded. He's got this huge knife. It's scary. Man, it's intimidating. It's funny. And stab. And he's got one, and stab, and he's got one, and stab, and he's got one. And it's just a thrilling, you talk about a simple plot that a lay person can understand, but a magician can also enjoy. There's nothing more linear or simple than you have a card selected, it's shuffled back in the pack, you are blindfolded, you spread the cards out on the table and stab, you get 1, or you get 2 or 3. Great plot. When Penn and Teller did this, so they do the same thing. They have a card selected. It's shuffled back into the pack. It's being spread out. So here's Penn Jillette, right? Penn Jillette is spreading the cards out. And Teller is, I'm not sure if he's blind, he might be blind. I'm trying to remember this thing. If I find the link, I'll put it below. I promise you. I haven't seen it in years, so I'm trying to recall exactly how this worked. But you know, he's trying to stab the card, and Penn gets his hand in the way, and so Teller slams the knife down. Penn screams. He picks up his hand. The knife is through his hand. And stuck to his palm with the knife through his hand is the selected card. Oh, you know, now nobody else ought to do that. It belongs to Penn and Teller. But it just shows you that you can take a standard effect and bring it to a whole new level. It was fantastic to see them do that. Now, another trick you should learn is a stop card. Let me tell you a little story about the stop card. Stop card has been a theme for me for years and years and years. I have been searching for the perfect method of a stop card. Let me explain the effect to you. Effect is this. A card is selected, shuffled back into the pack. You or an audience member begins to count down the cards face down. At some point, an audience member calls stop. That's why they call it the stop card. At the card they called stop, that's the chosen card. I mean, again, it's a simple plot. And it's just a breathtaking effect. I've seen Darren Brown do it. But here's the story I wanted to tell you. So I call a dealer. Now, this is after Denny passed away. If I had called Denny, this goes to show you the difference between a great dealer and a good dealer. If I had called Denny and I said to Denny, Denny, I'd like you to recommend a stop card to me, he would rattle off 6 or 7 books that contain a stop card effect. He would rattle off 6 or 7 commercially available effects. And he would say, these are the pros and cons of each. You select one. And then he would sell me whichever one I decided on. That's the way Denny did business. He had an encyclopedic mind. Even though he was a stage performer, he knew this stuff backwards and forwards. He lived and breathed magic. That's what you want from a dealer. So I call a prominent dealer. I'm not going to name the dealer because I don't want to embarrass the poor person. But I call a prominent dealer. It was not a local dealer, by the way. It was a nationally known dealer. And I posed the question, can you recommend a stop card to me? And the dealer said, what is that? What is the thing? He didn't know what the stop card plot was. Even after I explained it to him, he still didn't know. And that was really disappointing. I have collected several variations of the stop card. I have one that I'm actually doing right now. I don't want to tip the method, but it's a great plot. It's one of my favorite plots, and so I'm currently doing it in my show. And then there's Brainwave, folks. I mentioned Brainwave before. I want to mention it again. I think the Brainwave plot is really good. It's often attributed to Di Vernon. I'm not sure who invented it. My purpose in doing this video was not to give you a history of effects and who invented them, but I think it's often attributed to Vernon. And the basic effect is this. A pack of cards is sitting out in full view. Your spectator names a card, any of the 52 cards. You spread the cards. It's the only one face up in the deck. Very often it's the only one of an opposite color as well. There are some variations on this that I'd like to recommend to you if you're thinking of doing it. Phoenix. If you're not familiar with the Phoenix cards, and my purpose in doing these videos is never to expose methods. However, I do want to make certain recommendations, and if you're interested in the Brainwave Plot, you need to check out the Phoenix variation. Also, there's a brand new effect on the market. Just came out by David Regal called All Alone. Now, the All Alone plot's a little bit different. Here's the All Alone plot. Your spectator names, and you have the deck sitting out now. The deck is face down. You can see the backs, but you can't see the fronts. Spectator names any card. It is the only card face up in the deck. In addition, it is the only card with a face. All the other cards are blank. I mean, that is stellar. And the method is outrageous. So check out David Regal's All Alone. You will not regret it. And then there's another variation that I've done for on and off for probably 30 years. And that is an effect that's commercially available called King Brain. In the King Brain variant, here's basically what happens. You spread the deck face down. you show that one of them has a red back. All the others are blue, one has a red back. You explain, you know which one has the red back. You're going to give the cards a mix so that nobody knows exactly where the red card is. You begin to pass them face up in front of the audience member. The audience member identifies whichever card he or she believes has the red back. You put that card on the spectator's palm. You show the rest of the pack is all blue. You lift that card. It's the only red card. It's a nice variant on the King Brain theme, or on the Brainwave theme. And I find that people who are familiar with Brainwave are not familiar with King Brain. So, and it's very easy to do. There's no sleight of hand involved. So it's good. It's not as strong as King Brain as Brainwave, but it's good. Now, that's 3. Another effect I think you should learn is Out of This World. Once again, there are many variations of Out of This World. In short, here's the plot. Your spectator separates cards face down. And when you reveal those cards, they have separated the blacks from the reds perfectly. I remember, I think it was George Sands. I went to a George Sands lecture. And George was doing a lot of rope stuff. But I was a fairly young magician at the time, and George asked me. Now all the guys were. This was an SAM event, Society of American Magicians. Joe Bruno was there. Eddie Robinette was there. A lot of great guys were there. George Dempsey. So George, he knew I didn't have all my marbles going in the same direction exactly, and. So he says to me, "You ever see Out of This World?" I said, "No." And now at the time he had a commercially available version, and this is, there's probably 100 different methods for accomplishing Out of This World, and George had a method he wanted to sell at this particular lecture. So and since he found out that I didn't know the effect, he thought I'd be perfect for it. So. He's given the cards a shuffle and a mix, and he's asking me to separate, and I did, and they were separated perfectly. And it was the first time I had ever been. I never saw the effect before that moment. So here's the first time I'm exposed to it. I'm doing it, and I'm telling you, it's magic that happens in your hands. It's magic that you as a spectator accomplish somehow, and there's nothing more magical to a spectator, to a layman, the magic that happens in their hand. This is why sponge balls are so powerful. Now, you heard Penn and Teller recently comment to a sponge ball performer, "That's a kid's trick, but you took it to a new level." That was a shame. That was a shame, because you can do a standard sponge ball routine for a layman, and it will blow them away because the magic happens in their hand. That's why it's a powerful effect. That's why Out of This World is a powerful effect, because it's happening in their hands. Now, another effect that I want to recommend to you, I call it McDonald Aces. Now, McDonald Aces has a particular method associated with it. Vernon in this series and Ricky J on 52 Assistants do a gaff-less version of an assembly. Now, I think Ricky J does the version out of Erdnase, which is using queens. Vernon may use aces, I'm not sure. But the basic effect is this. You have 4 piles of cards. There's an ace or a queen or a jack. I do a jack, by the way, and there's a video below of me doing, it's called Baseball in Heaven. That's my variation on the McDonald Aces. So you have four piles of cards. You have a designated card in each pile. As I said, it could be an ace, a jack, a queen. You pick up the first pile and you show them, and the card is gone. Second pile, third pile, the card vanishes, and all cards assemble in the fourth and final pack. That is an assembly. Some people call it an ace assembly. But McDonald Aces has, I think, the easiest version, and it's very commercial. So take a look at that. And then another effect is the one that Cy Keller taught me, and that is Triumph. Triumph is basically this. You have a card selected. You mix the card. You shuffle the cards so they're half face up, half face down, all mixed. The selected card is put back into the deck. The deck is spread. All the cards have righted themselves except one, and that's the selected card. That is the triumph. I believe, and again I'm not certain, but I believe it's a Divernon effect. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. Don't miss it. Another card effect is the ambitious card. Many restaurant entertainers, guys or ladies that do table hopping, will recommend the ambitious card as a basic, decent commercial card effect. I will as well. If you're not familiar, here's the basic plot. It's better, I think, if the card is signed. Doesn't have to be. You have a card selected. It is placed in the center of the deck, and it magically appears on top. You place it in the center, it magically appears on top. I love the variation where you bend it. You place it in the center, you can see the crimp, and the crimp slowly rises and pop, it jumps out of the top. It's a great effect. I believe it's taught in the Royal Road to Card Magic. So ambitious card. Then cards across. Now Harbin here thinks that the cards across plot is too complicated for laymen. Denny Haney performed the cards across effect in his stage act for years and years and years and got great reaction for it. Now, Denny was a natural entertainer. He knew how to embellish. He knew how to bring this thing to life. But I want to recommend it to you. The basic plot is this. You have cards selected. They're placed in an envelope. You have placed cards in another envelope. The cards actually move from one envelope to the other magically. So you might have 10 cards in this envelope, 10 cards in that envelope, and now you have 7 cards in this envelope and 13 cards in that envelope, and only the selections moved. It's a great plot. I think it's easy to follow. I don't think you should neglect it. There have been whole books written on this theme alone, and Dan Harlan devoted an entire Tarbell course video to the Cards Across theme, which I highly recommend to you if you're interested in it. And finally, folks, the last card effect that I think you should devote some time to is the rising cards. Now, I currently do a variant on the rising cards. I do, I'm trying to remember what it's called. There are a few different versions of it out there, but basically it's this. There's a houlette, that is an object that holds cards, suspended on a ribbon. The magician holds one end of the ribbon, a spectator holds the other end of the ribbon. The houlette's suspended freely on this ribbon, and the cards rise out of the pack suspended from the ribbon. I think it's a brilliant variation. I love it. I remember doing one of the early commercially available versions of the rising cards, the one you can get from any magic dealer. Cards you have a card selected, shuffled back into the deck. You just hold it or set it against a goblet or set it into a wine glass. The card rises, great effect. Again, Dan Harlan devoted an entire video to the rising card theme as part of his Tarbell series, so check that out. Anyway, Darien, I hope I gave you some food for thought. Your original question to me, do a video on the best way to learn card magic. Well, the best way to learn card magic really depends on your objective and your audience. But, and I want to repeat this at this point, and I'll repeat it again in other videos, you cannot learn a performance art if you are not performing the art. The best way to learn anything is to do it. And I recommend that you pick up some material from these resources, learn it well, and then go out and perform it. You're going to learn more from performing your magic than you will ever learn from books or videos. I promise you. Folks, if you enjoy what you're seeing, please subscribe. I would love to have your subscription. I would love to have you interact with me. Please comment, talk to me, tell me what you want to see. I'll be happy to do special videos for you, just as I have done for Darien. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day. Take care. I'll see you next time.